Lego, come on, man. You can't just make this video talking about Timmy Stutzle, Jimmy Stu, I guess you could say, and not go over Jamie Drysdale as well because he was included in that tweet you're going to be referring to. No need to panic there, fellow Lego Rocks 99 viewer, because we do plan to give Jamie Drysdale his fair share of the spotlight. That's just not this video, though, unfortunately. Today we're going over back to the 2020 NHL Entry Draft and revisiting the top 3 picks of that entire selection. The reason we're talking about this is because of a Twitter post made by Byron Bader a few days ago, or actually no, yesterday. Yeah, my bad. So, for a newsflash, anybody that has been out of the loop for a little bit, the 2020 NHL Entry Draft was a pretty big one because it was the first draft out of 2 that was done remotely. We had ourselves an entire pausing up of the season before the draft was inevitably held in, when the heck was it, October? Something crazy like that. And what normally would have been a very stacked draft season with everything culminating in the start of June ended up becoming an even longer summer of endless debate that kind of got people overthinking, okay, is it really, worth it to converse about this stuff as much as we have been? Because the draft should have been done 3 months ago. Lo and behold, the first 3 picks of the 2020 NHL Entry Draft went as follows. The first overall pick belonged to the New York Rangers and they selected Alexis Lafreniere. The second overall pick belonged to the LA Kings. They selected Quinton Byfield. And the third overall belonged to the San Jose Sharks. Belonged to the Ottawa Senators. Haha, Erik Karlsson trade right there, baby. And they selected Jimmy Stu. Tim Stutzle was the first German taken off the board, and he went over to Ottawa. The reason we're talking about these 3 is because heading into the draft, and I think a lot of people that were around the YouTube channel and watching a whole bunch of videos because we were in quarantine back in the summer of 2020, you might actually remember just how clickbaity and how often we made videos talking about the top 3 picks in the 2020 NHL Draft. Oh, some people say that Marco Rossi should be a little bit higher. Others say that Byfield should be number 1. Could Tim Stutzle challenge Lafreniere for the first overall spot? What the heck is going to go on with Detroit? Because they were the worst team by a mile and they dropped to number 4 in the draft lottery. There was a conversation or two going around about all 3 of these guys, and at the end of the day, the draft order went 1, 2, 3, Lafreniere, Byfield, Stutzle. The reason we're talking about them here in this video is because of Byron Bader's Twitter post. This is what he said yesterday on August 14th. Nearly 2 years removed from the 2020 NHL Draft, it should be just 2 years flat because the pandemic pushed the draft over to October. Tim Stutzle and Jamie Drysdale have emerged as the most likely to turn into stars from the 2020 class. Now, if you don't know Byron Bader, he is the creator of Hockey Prospecting. It's a service online where you can go out there and look at prospects. He is an NHL draft consultant and a data scientist who does a whole bunch of work that analyzes prospects from an analytical data point of view. What he does is he takes a look at NHL comparable players in the past who have produced at similar rates in similar leagues as a lot of these younger guys, both in the NHL and before they made the NHL, and he projects where these players are going to be in a few years based off of the historical data. It's a pretty non-negotiable way of analyzing prospects because it's very black and white. It's, okay, if this prospect produces like this, it means that he is going to become like this because other prospects that have produced in the same way have become like this in the past. There's no real room for debate here, which is why a lot of people like to look at Byron Bader and say, okay, I don't really like it. Others say, okay, it's a good frame of reference to give you an idea as to where things are going to go. I kind of lean a little bit more to the latter side because, of course, data and analytics and point production, it's not the be-all and end-all, but at the same time, it gives us a good framework as to what we can refer to when it comes to trying to make our predictions as to where these prospects are going to go. Tim Stutzle and Jamie Drysdale are the 2 guys that have emerged with the best NHL equivalency scores out of the top of the draft so far. Let's disregard Drysdale because he's a defenseman and he didn't go in the top 3, and talk about Tim Stutzle because his profile is so gosh darn good that I wanted to talk about it here in the channel. Tim Stutzle, in his Draft Plus 2 NHL season, was absolutely phenomenal. He had an NHL E score of 60, and if you take a look at his offensive NHLer probabilities, he's got a comparable profile to 1. Mike Modano, 2. Elias Pettersson, 3. Ilya Kovalchuk, 4. Dave Andreychuk, and 5. Jason Arnott. Now, one of those names you can debate is not like the others, but the top 3 right there, Modano, Pettersson, and Kovalchuk, these are some very good names for a young guy to be compared to, especially as a guy who is only 20 years old. There definitely is a lot of potential here with Tim Stutzle, and a lot of Ottawa Senators fans saw that this previous year. Take a look at the amount of points that he had on the season. In 79 games played, Tim Stutzle had 58 total points. But I wanted to bring this entire idea up because what Byron Bader says is that Stutzle has the highest potential of forwards to become a star. What he also says, not directly, but in a way, is that he has a higher likelihood than the first 2 picks ahead of him do to become that star. Here's a reply from Paul Frank going over Quinton Byfield, the 2nd overall LA Kings guy. Stutzle is a stud, gonna be a great player. I had high hopes for Byfield, but I'm fearing his injuries may limit his growth potential. Tough to keep coming back from continuously getting hurt. Byron Bader replies, says, I was positive Byfield was going to be a big star. He still could be, but I've been a bit surprised about how little he's been able to produce, even with the circumstances he has faced since being drafted. Let's go over that unicorn of a prospect here. Quinton Byfield, 2nd overall, 19 years old still. He'll turn 20 in like a few days. 6'5", 220, and he's a guy that was drafted pretty much to be an absolute unicorn of an offensive package. Think Evgeny Malkin, but a little bit bigger, as well as a little bit more finesse and a little bit more like a ballerina. This previous season, Quinton Byfield had 10 points in 40 games played, which, I'm going to be honest, man, if you told me back in 2019-20, oh yeah, Quinton Byfield in his draft +2, he's going to play in the NHL, he's going to play for the Kings, he's going to be a top 6 guy or a middle 6 guy, and he's only going to get a point every 4 games. I would have been shocked, because the way Quinton Byfield dominated the game in the OHL was so good, it was so above and beyond exceptional that a lot of people, myself included, saw Quinton Byfield as potentially having that franchise ceiling to define the LA Kings going forward. Now, sure, he's only 19. He's got a lot of time to go out there and figure things out. All it takes is one Jack Hughes-like season where you come alive and you explode for an over-point per game year to solidify yourself as one of the better young guys in the entire NHL. And when it comes to Alexis Lafreniere, hey, this guy's 20 years old already. He's turning 21 in October, 6'2", 196, the 1st overall pick in the 2020 draft. He was a guy that a lot of people said should have gone 1st overall. Why? Because he was twice a point a game in the Rimouski Oceanic system in the QMJHL, and he was so good at the World Juniors. He was just in all situations, put the puck on his stick and good things happen kind of player. He just knew what to do to put the puck in the back of the net, almost exclusively in the QMJHL, that the hockey mind that he possessed is the reason why he went so high up in the draft. This previous season, though, Alexis Lafreniere had 31 points in 79 games. Not terrible, but it's not the 58-point marker that Tim Stutzle had in the same amount of games played as well. Lafreniere also had 9 points in 20 games for the Rangers in the postseason, and he had a lot of success playing with Capo Kakko and Philip Cheadle on the so-called kid line. We'll see how they're able to produce next season once the Gerard Gallant train goes up and running again. But for now, Alexis Lafreniere still has a lot more to prove in the same way that Quinton Byfield does, and in the same way that Jack Hughes did the prior year as well. We had been noting Jack Hughes and his entire profile this past season because, man, that guy absolutely exploded, and he's got that $8 million contract for a reason. Alexis Lafreniere and Quinton Byfield, I feel like these guys are next up on the chart to have somewhat of a breakout season like that, where they just really get it all together and they produce the points that you all expected them to produce back when they were drafted in 2020. For Tim Stutzle, he's already there, and I think he definitely does have a lot of potential to potentially reach the 60, 70, 75, 85 point marker. I think in his ceiling, prime year, I think he could definitely be a 90, 95 point scorer, especially if he plays with Brady Tkachuk and Josh Norris the entire time. Now, who knows what's going to happen now with the Sens, because you have Claude Giroux, you have Alex DeBrincat. You could have realistically like 6 60-point scorers on your team, which is not really something I'm looking forward to watching as a Canucks fan, but either way, I mean, the Ottawa Senators, you guys have had some big dubs this previous offseason, and Tim Stutzle's development is one of the underrated ones that I feel like could be going under the radar. So, talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about Byron Bader and his entire Twitter analysis over here, talking about how Stutzle and Drysdale have the best shots at becoming star NHL players. Talk to me in the comments as well how you feel about Lafreniere and Byfield not being given that label. Do you think Stutzle should have gone 1st overall now with 2 years in the books? I get it, it's way too premature to go out there and say that, but there are conversations we can have along the way that I think make things interesting. We'll probably revisit this topic 2, 3, 4 years down the line every single year because it was a pretty good one to follow. But talking to the comments, your thoughts, I hope you enjoyed this Juraj 9, and bye.